conditions. A person still holds one ultimate freedom, the freedom to choose their attitude towards suffering. Let that sink in for a moment. You cannot always choose what happens to you, but you can always choose how you respond. This isn't just philosophical comfort. This is the foundation of human resilience. Frankl observed a striking pattern in the camps. Some prisoners, despite having nothing, no possessions, no certainty, no freedom, still shared their last piece of bread, still offered comfort to others, still found reasons to live. Meanwhile, others, broken by despair, surrendered completely to hopelessness. What made the difference between them? It wasn't physical strength or luck, it was meaning. Those who found meaning in their suffering, even in that hell, managed to preserve their humanity. Those who couldn't, lost it. This observation isn't merely historical, it's a mirror reflecting your life today. How many times have you felt imprisoned by your circumstances, by loss, betrayal, failure, or the crushing feeling that life has turned against you? The truth Frankl teaches us is this: suffering itself is not what destroys us. What destroys us is suffering without meaning. When pain has no purpose, it becomes unbearable. But when pain becomes a teacher, when it transforms into a path toward growth, it becomes strength. Frankl once said that life is never made unbearable by circumstances alone, but only by the lack of meaning and purpose. This statement holds the power to transform everything because it suggests that, even when life feels impossible, there is still a why waiting to be discovered. And once you find your why, know how can defeat you. Ask yourself, what is the meaning of my suffering? Why am I going through this? What could this pain be trying to awaken within me? Most people run from these questions because they're uncomfortable. Yet it's precisely in these questions that our transformation begins. The pain we avoid is often the doorway to the person we're meant to become. Frankl's philosophy, known as logotherapy, teaches that the search for meaning is the most fundamental human motivation, not pleasure, not power, but meaning. He witnessed that those who could see a purpose beyond their immediate suffering could endure almost anything. A mother living for her child, an artist dreaming of finishing his work, a man holding on to the memory of love. These weren't mere illusions, they were spiritual forces, stronger than despair itself. And here lies the paradox. Meaning doesn't always come from joy. It often emerges from the exact opposite, from pain, loss, and endurance. What if the very things you think will destroy you could become the foundation of your greatest strength? But how do we find meaning when surrounded by darkness? How can one discover purpose when life seems senseless? As we continue this journey, we'll uncover the hidden psychology behind the human capacity to transform pain into purpose, and why, according to Frankl, even the deepest despair contains a seed of transcendence if only we dare to look for it. Think about the last time you felt truly hopeless. Perhaps it was the end of a relationship that tore your heart open, the loss of someone irreplaceable, the collapse of a dream you built your life around, or that hollow emptiness that comes when life seems to have lost all direction. In those moments, when pain fills every corner of your being, there's a voice that whispers, "What's the point?" That question, that silent cry, is where Viktor Frankl's philosophy begins. Because it's not suffering itself that destroys us, it's the sense that it has no purpose. During his years in the concentration camps, Frankl observed something extraordinary. People who had a clear reason to live, something or someone to hold onto, could endure what seemed impossible. He wrote that even when stripped of every freedom, one still possesses the freedom to choose one's attitude. This is the last human freedom, the ability to decide how we will face what life presents to us. It is the point where our spirit either breaks or awakens. Imagine a man standing in a freezing barracks, beaten, starved, and humiliated, and yet within him burns a small flame of meaning. That flame might be the image of a wife he loves, the thought of a future he believes in, or even a simple sense of duty, the desire to remain human in an inhuman world. That inner flame becomes stronger than his suffering. It gives him direction, identity, and power. As Frankl said, in some way, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. This truth applies to all of us, even outside the horrors of war. We each carry invisible prison situations that confine us, emotions that suffocate us, but the moment we find meaning in what we endure, the chains begin to loosen. The question becomes, how do we find meaning when everything seems meaningless? Frankl identified 3 paths through which a person can discover meaning in life. The first is through work or creation, by doing something that matters, by contributing, by giving shape to something that expresses who we are. The second is through love and relationships, by experiencing the depth of connection with another being, by seeing in them something sacred and irreplaceable. The third, perhaps the hardest, is through the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering by transforming tragedy into triumph, despair into dignity. Let's look closer at that third path, because it's the one that tests the human soul most deeply. To find meaning in suffering doesn't mean to romanticize pain. It means to face it with consciousness, to refuse to let it define us, and to choose to grow from it rather than be destroyed by it. Every time you face suffering, life is asking you a question. What will you do with this? And your answer is given not in words, but in the way you live. Think of a seed. Before it can grow, it must be buried in darkness. The soil heavy, cold, silent becomes its place of transformation. It is the pressure of that darkness that cracks the seed open, allowing life to emerge. Your suffering works the same way. It's not a punishment. It's a process. It's the environment through which your soul learns to awaken. Frankl discovered that when a person stops running from suffering and instead gives it meaning, something incredible happens. They transcend it. They rise above the pain, not because it disappears, but because they become larger than it. The suffering remains, but the person is no longer crushed by it. They carry it differently, with purpose, with dignity. How different would your life be if, instead of asking why is this happening to me, you asked what is this trying to teach me? What would change if you believed that even your pain was a form of guidance, pushing you toward a deeper understanding of yourself? Many people find that when they finally stop fighting their suffering and start listening to it, it reveals the truth they had been avoiding, a truth about who they really are, what truly matters, and what they are capable of. Frankl once treated a man who had lost his wife and could not bear the grief. Instead of giving him comforting words, Frankl asked him a simple question. What would have happened if you had died first, and your wife had been left to grieve for you? The man thought for a moment and said, "She would have suffered terribly." Frankl replied, "You see, your suffering now spares her that pain. You are paying the price so she doesn't have to." The man left in silence, but something had changed in him. His suffering had found meaning. It didn't make the pain disappear, but it transformed it into love, into sacrifice, into purpose. This story shows us that even when we cannot change our situation, we can still change ourselves, and that single shift in perspective is enough to transform despair into strength. The human spirit, Frankl believed, is capable of finding meaning in the most impossible conditions. The question is whether we are willing to look for it. What if your greatest pain contains the seed of your greatest transformation? If you look closely at the people who radiate inner peace, those who remain calm, even when the world around them falls apart, you'll notice something remarkable. It's not that their lives are easy, or that they were spared from pain. It's that they understand their suffering. They've given it meaning. That understanding turns chaos into clarity and pain into power. This is what Viktor Frankl called the ultimate human achievement, to say yes to life, even in the face of suffering. Frankl's insight echoes through the wisdom of many thinkers and spiritual traditions. The ancient Stoics taught that suffering becomes unbearable only when we resist it. Epictetus, who was born a slave, once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Centuries later, Frankl would live this truth in the darkest conditions imaginable, proving that it is not just philosophy, it is survival. The more we resist pain, the more it consumes us. But when we accept it, we begin to master it. Let's reflect on a simple yet profound truth. Suffering is not the enemy of life, it's part of it. Without pain, there can be no compassion. Without loss, there can be no appreciation. Without struggle, there can be no growth. Life's beauty does not come from its perfection, but from its fragility. When Frankl spoke of meaning, he wasn't talking about something abstract or mystical. He was talking about the courage to live fully, even when life hurts. Psychologically, this idea changes everything. Modern research in resilience and positive psychology supports Frankl's findings. People who give meaning to their suffering are less likely to fall into depression, anxiety, or despair. They recover faster from trauma and often emerge stronger than before. This process is known as post-traumatic growth. The idea that adversity, rather than destroying us, can expand our capacity for wisdom, empathy, and purpose. Pain, when faced consciously, can become a form of rebirth. But this transformation requires something that most of us fear: surrender. Not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of resistance. It's about accepting what is, not with resignation, but with awareness. It means looking at your suffering and saying, "I will not run from you. I will learn from you." That's the moment when the victim becomes the creator of meaning. Think about how this applies to your own life. Perhaps you've been through moments when you felt broken, when everything you believed in fell apart. Maybe you still carry wounds from those experiences. What if those wounds are not there to destroy, You but to reveal who you truly are? What if your greatest pain contains the seed of your greatest strength? When you see your suffering as a teacher, you stop asking why me, and start asking what now. Frankl taught that life's meaning is not something we invent, it's something we discover. It's hidden in the very experiences we try to avoid. Pain is not an interruption of life, it is life speaking to us in its rawest language. Every tear, every failure, every heartbreak carries a message. When you listen to it deeply, you begin to see that suffering is not meaningless, it's the fire through which your soul is refined. Even modern neuroscience supports this idea. Studies show that the brain can reinterpret pain when it is given meaning. People who attach purpose to their suffering, whether through faith, relationships, or service, experience less psychological distress. Meaning changes how the brain processes pain. It literally rewires your mind to endure what once seemed unbearable. Frankl used to say that happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue. It's the byproduct of living a meaningful life. The same is true of peace. You cannot force peace by escaping pain. You can only find it by understanding it. The more you search for comfort, the more fragile you become. But the moment you embrace discomfort as part of your evolution, you begin to discover a strength that cannot be shaken. Every person, at some point, will be asked by life to suffer. It's not a question of if, but when. The real question is whether that suffering will break you or awaken you. Frankl's message is that even in your darkest hour, you still have the freedom to choose meaning, and in that choice lies your liberation. As he wrote, everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. So what attitude will you choose? Will you let your pain define you? Or will you define your pain? Will you allow it to crush you? Or will you use it as the force that shapes your inner strength? This is not just philosophy, it's a path to freedom. But how do we walk this path when the darkness seems overwhelming? There comes a moment in every human life when the question of meaning is no longer abstract. When it becomes the only question that matters. It often appears in silence. When the noise of the world fades and you are left alone with your own soul. It is in that silence that you begin to see the truth Frankl discovered. Life is not about avoiding pain. It's about transcending it. Because once you discover the meaning behind your suffering, nothing can truly break you anymore. Frankl survived the concentration camps, but his survival was not merely physical, it was spiritual. The body can endure hunger, cold, and exhaustion, but the spirit must have a reason to endure. That reason is meaning, and meaning, he realized, can be found even in tragedy, especially in tragedy. He wrote that suffering is like a gas, it fills the space it is given. But if your soul expands, the suffering becomes smaller in proportion. The pain remains, but it no longer defines you. You outgrow it. That is the essence of freedom. Most people believe freedom means doing whatever we want. Frankl discovered that true freedom begins the moment we no longer let external circumstances dictate our inner state. When you understand that your attitude is your final domain of freedom, that no one, not even fate itself, can take it from you, you become untouchable. That's when you realize that your suffering, far from being your enemy, has been your greatest teacher all along. Think of the greatest figures in history, people like Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison and emerged not with hatred, but with compassion. Or Helen Keller, who despite being blind and deaf became a voice of courage and hope for millions. Or Frankl himself, who turned his suffering into a philosophy that continues to heal countless souls. Each of them found meaning where others saw only despair, and in doing so, they discovered a freedom that no chains could destroy. The same potential exists in you. You may not control what happens in your life, but you can always control what it means to you. Pain will come, that is inevitable, but whether that pain becomes your prison or your path depends on your perspective. Frankl used to tell his patients that even when we face unavoidable suffering, we still have a choice. We can become bitter, or we can become better. The decision is ours. And here lies the paradox of suffering. The more we try to escape it, the more power it has over us. But when we embrace it with courage and meaning, it loses its power to destroy us. This is the secret that transforms pain into peace, not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger. You become the kind of person who can face storms without breaking, who can walk through darkness and still see light. Ask yourself now, what pain in your life have you been resisting? What experience still holds power over your heart? What if, instead of asking life to take it away, you ask life to show you what it means? What if your suffering is not punishment, but initiation, a passage meant to awaken your deepest strength? Sometimes, the most painful moments are the ones that give birth to our higher selves. Frankl believed that love is the highest form of meaning. Even in the camps, he found that when a person thought of someone they loved, a wife, a child, even the memory of a loved one, they could endure anything. Love, he wrote, is the ultimate and the highest goal to which man can aspire, because love gives suffering a sacred purpose. It transforms endurance into devotion. It turns despair into hope. When you suffer for love, you are no longer suffering alone. You are suffering for something greater than yourself. So when life wounds you, and it will, remember this, you have within you the power to give that pain meaning. You can turn loss into compassion. You can turn rejection into strength. You can turn despair into wisdom. You can turn darkness into light. This is what Frankl called the human capacity for self-transcendence, the ability to rise above yourself, to see your life from a higher perspective, and to find purpose even in suffering. What wounds have you been carrying that might become your greatest gifts to the world? In the end, Viktor Frankl's message transcends psychology. It speaks directly to the human soul. It reveals the profound truth that even when life strips you of everything, it cannot take away your ability to choose how you will respond. That choice is your greatest power. It's the difference between merely existing and truly living, between breaking under pressure and awakening to your full potential. When you stand at the crossroads of suffering, remember that you are not the first to walk this path. Countless others have faced the abyss and discovered within themselves a strength they never knew existed. Their stories remind us that human resilience isn't about avoiding pain. It's about transforming it into something meaningful. Consider the mother who loses a child and channels her grief into helping other parents. Think of the veteran whose trauma becomes the foundation for healing others. Remember the countless individuals who have turned their deepest wounds into their most powerful contributions to humanity. They didn't escape suffering, they alchemized it. This transformation begins with a simple yet profound shift in perspective. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What can I become through this?" Instead of seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances, recognize yourself as the author of your response to those circumstances. Frankl discovered that meaning emerges in three distinct ways: through what we give to the world, our work and creations; through what we take from the world, our experiences and relationships; and through the stand we take towards suffering when we cannot avoid it. This third path, the attitude we choose in the face of unavoidable pain, is perhaps the most powerful expression of human freedom. When you embrace this freedom, something remarkable happens. Your suffering doesn't disappear, but it no longer defines you. It becomes part of your story rather than the whole story. You carry it differently, not as a burden that crushes you, but as an experience that has deepened you. This is the paradox at the heart of Frankl's philosophy. By accepting suffering rather than fighting it, by giving it meaning rather than cursing it, we transcend it. We discover within ourselves a dimension of freedom that no external circumstance can touch. Think about the moments in your life when you've grown the most. Weren't they often the moments of greatest challenge? The times when you were forced to dig deeper, to discover resources within yourself you didn't know existed? Pain, when approached with consciousness, becomes the chisel that sculpts our character, revealing strengths we never knew we possessed. Frankl himself emerged from the concentration camps not just as a survivor, but as a healer. His suffering became the foundation for a philosophy that has helped millions find meaning in their own struggles. What greater testament could there be to the human capacity for transformation? As you face your own challenges, remember that meaning isn't something you wait for, it's something you create. It emerges from the choices you make, the perspective you adopt, and the purpose you discover even in your darkest moments. When life seems most unbearable, ask yourself, what is this experience calling forth from me? What qualities am I developing through this struggle? How might this pain be preparing me for a deeper understanding, a greater compassion, a more authentic life? These questions don't diminish your suffering, but they prevent it from becoming the whole of your existence. They create space around the pain, space in which meaning can grow. Remember that even in the concentration camps, Frankl observed moments of transcendent humanity: prisoners who gave away their last piece of bread, who spoke words of encouragement when they themselves were dying, who walked through the barracks comforting others. These weren't superhuman beings. They were ordinary people who had discovered an extraordinary truth, that even in the most dehumanizing conditions, we can choose to affirm life, to express love, to create meaning. If they could find meaning there, what might be possible for you in your struggles? The ultimate message of Frankl's life and work is this: you are more than your suffering. You are more than your circumstances. You are, at your core, a meaning-making being with the freedom to choose your response to whatever life presents. This understanding doesn't make life easier, but it makes you stronger. It doesn't shield you from pain, but it gives that pain purpose. It doesn't answer all your questions, but it helps you live meaningfully with the questions themselves. When you truly grasp this truth, when you discover the meaning of your suffering, you become unbreakable, not because you won't feel pain, not because you won't sometimes falter, but because you know that whatever happens, you can find or create meaning in it. The world can shake you, but it cannot shatter you. Life can wound you, but it cannot defeat you, because nothing, absolutely nothing, can break a soul that knows why it endures. This is Viktor Frankl's enduring gift to humanity. The knowledge that even in our darkest hours, we retain the freedom to choose meaning over despair, purpose over emptiness, love over fear, and in that choice lies our ultimate liberation. When you discover the meaning of suffering, you discover the unbreakable power of the human spirit, and that discovery changes everything.